Welcome in, lovers. You're in the Embodied Liberation Lounge. I'm your host, Lola Darling. Let's vibe. Welcome back, lovers, to another week in the Embodied Liberation Lounge. And the episode I have for you this week was a super empowering, amazing conversation that I had with Tanya Jane over on the Big Dreamers Bible podcast. And we had such a good conversation. She asked me the best questions, and I got to really dive into my work and embodiment and what it means to me to live embodied, as well as how we can hold that and how we move forward and with healing, and what is elemental embodiment, which is something I'm super passionate about. So check out this episode for all the good juicy details where you get to actually get the flip side of me telling you a bit about what I do for work, and play and pleasure is all the same, and where somebody else is asking the questions and I just get to riff and transmit and go deep. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. It was a really empowering conversation, and I loved being a guest on the Big Dreamers Bible podcast with the Tanya Jane. You can check her out on Instagram and go check out her podcast as well. It's amazing. Please enjoy. Today I have a special episode for you of an interview I did with Natasha for the Igniting Shakti podcast, and we went deep into the body, embodiment, the nervous system, and talked about some amazing things that we can do when we come deeper into our bodies. So I hope you enjoy this podcast episode, and here you go.
Welcome to the Igniting Shakti podcast. I'm your guide, Natasha, and I'm here to have those real and at time raw conversations in regard to the sacred, the divine feminine, or I like to say Shakti. I want to invite you to explore and hopefully embrace this divine aspect that the feminine holds and gives us space to come to acknowledge in our everyday life. So I welcome you to Igniting Shakti. Welcome back, y'all. I am so excited to have a special guest with me today. Today I have Lola Darling. Now, Lola Darling has moved to Los Angeles from the small town in Oregon. And since then, she has been walking a healer's medicine and spiritual path. Lola has been a body worker and energy worker for over 12 years now, and more recently is a woman's sexuality and embodiment coach. And she's been trained by Layla Martin. Lola has traveled the world solo and strives to live an integrated and intentional life while constantly seeking to heal, grow, and evolve. So let's all welcome Lola to today's show. Welcome, Lola. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to jump in with my first question right off the bat, and that is, I know that you work with embodiment. What is your take on embodiment? What does that mean to you?
First of all, thank you so much for having me, Natasha. I'm super grateful to be here. And what is embodiment, and what does it mean to me? I've been really toying with this idea, and I'm actually about to have a whole podcast about it as well, but about kind of the interrelationship between embodiment and integration. And because I think that I think they're very interrelated, if not even sort of the same thing, but that's kind of something I'm exploring currently deeper. So I would say it's both of those, but I also feel that it is something that's been sort of put to the wayside on our healing journeys, as far as like how we can move to the next level, or how we can even Stop living from our trauma body and regulate our nervous systems. And when we can focus on embodiment and the integration and getting all parts of ourselves on board with the whole of who we are, because for me, that's really where embodiment is. It's like that wholeness of self where all of the parts of us, like, and by the parts, I mean like your heart and your mind and your soul and your inner child and like all of the inner child that you may have, because the body mind is alive and there may be like 87 parts of you that have like different wants and desires. And so embodiment comes with like bringing those all into the whole and like integrating them so that you're moving from a place where you're not only moving from wholeness, but you're moving with like all the parts of you on board. You're like in alignment with your truth and your authenticity and moving from that space. I have a lot of like things I like to talk about in embodiment too. And another thing I'll say is that there's embodiment where in the energy, but I think that you can't have embodiment without the actual like in your embodiment, I call it. And that's like being deeply connected to your body, to your posture, to your alignment, to all of your like centers, for instance, like your throat and your heart and your third eye and your womb and your root and like your power center, your solar plexus, and like really having like a tangible experience of the sensations and aliveness within all of those parts of you as like a physical interaction as well as like an energetic interaction.
So it's sort of like this, bringing this unity of body, mind, soul, emotions into that place of wholeness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was just saying, yeah, that's like exactly how I feel. It's sort of like the integration point of all of those at an energetic level, but also at a physical level and a spiritual level.
It's almost like the body leads the way for the energy in a way too.
Absolutely. And I think vice versa too. I do feel that you can like shift something in your energetic field and then bring it into the body as well. But I personally find it um I don't know if easier, but I find it more tangible to go into the body and explore and then see how that shifts in the energetic field as well. But you can do it both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find that the words like embodiment and alignments get so misused today and can mean so many different things to different people?
I mean, 1000%, especially in our industry, in the coaching industry, like people like to throw words around when they don't even actually have a contextual understanding of what it means to them. They're just throwing it around because they heard somebody else say it or because it's like a trendy word right now. Or, yeah, they, whatever it may be. Maybe it's a keyword that's hitting. So, yeah, I think a lot of those words in the industry can get lost in translation and lost in their potency when we're just throwing them around for marketing purposes.
Hmm. Hmm. So there has to be this real true and pure intention behind it.
I think you need to have an embodied understanding of
Hmm.
what it is you're saying before you say anything, whether that's you're tossing around these words like embodiment and alignment or authenticity or any of those things. Like there needs to be an embodied understanding of it and an intellectual understanding, but like really you should be embodying what that word means to you before you're selling it or teaching it.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. Now, I noticed with your work that you work with the elements. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I do. I really love to work with the elements a lot. I've been trained and studied Ayurveda for several years, so it sort of has came from that and has birthed into me its own sort of way of working with them.
And do you bring Ayurveda into your work?
Um, I bring Ayurveda into my work from the standpoint of it's I'm embodied in the perspective of Ayurveda and how I see the world. And so I really see the world through this sort of like elemental lens, and I would attribute that to what I know and understand from Ayurveda because I'm not seeing it through, say, a Chinese elemental perspective. I'm like seeing people's constitutions and bodies and ways of being much more from the five elements of Ayurveda, and something that's been downloaded into me within the past year that I've created, like I was also downloaded a breathwork modality based on not the 5 elements of Ayurveda, but actually a 6 element as well that has sort of been repressed and forgotten from society and is ready to be remembered. That's also a key part of our healing journey, of our embodiment journey, of our spiritual growth and evolution as well.
Oh, that is so cool. I want to learn more now.
So I do have an ebook that you can you can just like sign up to the link in my bio over on Instagram, and I wrote an ebook about it so that, and with the sake of saving time for the podcast, like people can just go read about the 6 element there, because it's like kind of poetic and also just like channeled writing from, and also it explains the 5 elements of Ayurveda as well, and sort of like how this theory came to be through me, but then it goes into depth about like what is the 6 element and why and how it fits into the whole picture.
And that's really cool because I also study Ayurveda in the sense that I'm a Ayurvedic health counselor. So the interesting part is that what's out in nature is all within us as well. So there's no difference within that. So when you were bringing up this integration of embodiment, the embodiment of the elements is no different than just looking out in nature. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I do. I feel like everything is as within, so without, right? And
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. Like we are so intricately connected to the earth and nature and the elements. Like there is no separation. And we've just forgotten because we have these huge intelligent brains that we carry around that like, you know, want to separate us for, and there's many, that's a whole like other podcast to go into like separation consciousness versus unity consciousness. But yeah, I think it's really about just remembering that we are not separate from nature. And I think the elements are such a simple doorway into that remembrance.
I love that simple doorway. I love that. Do you feel that within the embodiment, I'm going to say practices and bringing this kind of coaching of embodiment in to our daily life, do you find that women tend to have an easier grasp on this embodiment than men, or the feminine? Do you feel that
I feel like there's not a right answer to this question because I have 2 answers in mind. Are women, I do feel that women are more attuned, and if not more attuned, more easily able to attune to nature and to this aspect of embodiment and this connection, mostly because we're so cyclical already that like we're already naturally closer to that attunement even if we're not attuned to it. So I think that that's, yeah, I would say that like that's my answer. And then I kind of said that there's 2 answers because sure, if you're like kind of stuck in the coaching bubble, you can see like, oh yeah, for sure, women are like way more attuned and like in that. But when you kind of get outside of that bubble, there's still a lot of disembodiment or disconnection from that truth that we are nature. Like there's still so many people walking around feeling so separate from nature, from even their body, really. So I think it's both and, but I would say that women are more easily able to tune if they desire to.
and is that, do you feel more connected because when we think of the earth, she is a feminine kind of essence in a way?
I think that it could be. I also feel that it's both and. I kind of see Earth, and yeah, we call her Mother Earth, and she is Mother Earth and like the womb of the earth and all of that. But without without like the earth and the planet and that feminine, then we wouldn't necessarily know spirit as consciousness as the more masculine whole. And so I think that you do need both. And it's the polarity between having the both that you're even able to have that understanding. So
Absolutely, the duality between.
yeah, well, and because we also have both within us as well, I don't know that I would want to go as far as to say that, like, oh, because the earth is more feminine in nature and we are more feminine as women, that it makes it easier, because I feel that if you're able to reach into yourself and find the self-awareness and the wherewithal within you to like get so clear within yourself that you're able to really grasp both sides of you, meaning your masculine side and your feminine side, or your yin and your yang, if that's preferred language, right? Then it should be just as easy for you to connect to the feminine within you if you're a man as if you're a woman. Therefore, it should be rather just as easy to connect to an element or a planet that maybe has more feminine energy or more yin energy. So it's really about the attunement to the energetics of it all.
We'll get right back to the rest of this episode in just a moment. The House of Shakti is a monthly membership that not only reconnects you to the divine feminine, but is to reestablish your connection to the sacred part of yourself. House of Shakti is about reawakening yourself to your inner Shakti, and that is to bring not only more balance and wholeness to you and your life, but it brings more unity to body, mind, and soul. House of Shakti is where we bring more unity to the collective. And at the House of Shakti, our mantra is, through Shakti embodiment, unity follows. With that, we hope to see you in the House of Shakti. Now back to the episode.
Personally.
No, I love that. I'm on the same page, but just for the listeners, it's not so much about gender, it's about the energy that those two hold.
Yeah.
At least for me.
Yeah, for me as well. And not only that, you know, this might take us somewhere else, so bring us back if we don't want to go here, but like um I really strongly feel that, you know, there's all this polarity teaching and like you need to be more feminine, you're in your masculine too much, and that's why your business isn't working, or la la la, like all of this kind of stuff about polarity and the internal energetics. And I really like, my solid belief is that we are both, or we are all both all of the time. Like there is no like you need to be more this or you need to be more that. There is your embodied authentic nature, and like maybe that presents as more feminine or more masculine, but just because you're presenting as more of one energetic than the other doesn't mean you're any less of the other side of that pole. We are all both all of the time. So that's my opinion on that.
No, that's beautiful, because I come from the same thought that it's, you hold both of those energies, and the energetics, the essence, the embodiment of both of those, the integration of how they both work. It's no different from the moon and the sun, but there's this flux that it just, or the nervous system, it's just about this very gentle flux that keeps going back and forth between the two.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And I feel like it's really messing up a lot of people in their embodiment and in their integration and in their lives and in their businesses, when they dive too far into polarity teachings and keep telling themselves they need to be more this or less that, right? And basically then they're kind of doing within themselves is reiterating and compounding this like lack of trust for who they already just are authentically in their nature.
And you spoke right off the bat about this embodiment being about the embracing the wholeness of yourself, which is both.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's not just the feminine, it's not just masculine, but it's this integration of both. It's the bringing in the solar current and the lunar current both at the same time, or, like within their distinct energetics, of bringing those in and integrating them almost through like the central channel that they wind
Absolutely.
around.
Absolutely. And I find that when you lean too far one way or the other, especially when you're speaking from like a physical body standpoint, right? In your central channel, like if you're feeding yin, feeding yin, feeding yin, feeding yin, you're going to start to see imbalances in your physical body because you're not keeping that central channel balanced, because it's like the Ida and the Nadi, right? Like literally the yin and the yang going up and down your central channel of energetics. Like if you're constantly feeding one and telling the other, like, to be repressed because I'm too much of you, then like you're going to create physical disease. You're going to create repression. You're going to repress emotions and like truth and parts of yourself. And not only that, then you get imbalances in the body, but you start creating sort of these like false masks and false identities because you're like trying too hard to be something that's like maybe you are that, but you're like it's like you're feeding one wolf instead of like the truth.
Yeah, I always think conversations that I have with people, how much as humans, we can't seem to be just playing here in the middle of just going a little bit back and forth. We either have to swing way over to the right or way over to the left.
Well, and you know, I think that that's also how we learn, and that gets to be okay, and that's how we learn balance even as well. Like we almost have to swing around things, and then we like, oh, but like it's so much easier here when we're not like jerking ourselves around emotionally, so to speak, or what, or even energetically, or what, you know, whatever it is that you're working on at the time. But this sparks a conversation that's been coming up a lot for me, which is like a lot of that within the pendulum swing alone is because we again have these active, huge, intelligent minds, and they want to make everything complex when it can really just be simple. Like balance is simple, and that's why people like the pendulum swing, because it creates drama, it creates more chaos, it creates some disruption, because balance can be so simple that like people just get bored. They're like, oh, this is all I have to do to like just like feel good. Like, oh, okay, like let's shake some shit up.
I love that. Oh, this is what it likes to feel good, and it can be easy. Like, why is it that we want to do it hard?
I think conditioning, programming, I also think that the mind wants to stay in control and the mind likes a challenge. And so when things are hard, the mind has something to put its energy into to try and figure out. When things are easy, the mind is like, I'm bored. Like, I need something to do. Let's
I
create
love that.
chaos.
I love that. I'm bored. What am I going to do? Oh, I'm going to create some chaos right now.
Well, yeah, you know, like some people are addicted to drama. And a lot of people, honestly, in our society are addicted to drama, and not necessarily like because they want to be, but because they don't know any differently, because they've lived probably their whole life in a fight or flight sympathetic nervous state. And that makes you addicted to drama because that's where you feel comfortable and safe. It doesn't feel safe to feel a baseline of regulation. Like it feels so foreign, it doesn't feel safe.
That's so important. I love that you brought that up. The fact that it feels foreign, and it brings up the question is how many of us are actually walking around thinking how much we need to fix ourselves when we really don't need to be fixed. We just need to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a huge thing as well. And I'm a huge like promoter of healing and healing yourself and like doing the work, but I also think that we can get addicted to it, to where we're addicted to constantly trying to better ourselves or constantly trying to change ourselves. And it really stems from, you know, this wound that most of us share of not feeling good enough. And so I need to be better, and then we can get addicted to that, because
Yeah.
that's almost, it's almost right back to the nervous system thing, right, of like the sympathetic, being stuck in fight or flight, and the sympathetic nervous system being addicted to not being good enough or to our own unworthiness. Like, it makes the ego feel like it's right and thinking that, but it also keeps us in this sort of dysregulated state where we're constantly reaching for something that's not here yet.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the body in itself is always trying to get back to that place of homeostasis.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that as humans that we create the chaos, even though on that level of wanting to heal itself, the body always wants to go back to that place of homeostasis.
Wants to go back to what it knows as homeostasis too. I want to stress that, because a lot of times, as I was just saying before, like the body only knows fight or flight, and it only knows that as its homeostasis. And that is where healing comes in and is really important, because it's about creating new neural pathways and new neural networks, and really training or retraining or teaching or even learning, maybe for the first time ever in your adult life or ever in your life, that like what what it feels like to be regulated, and that that can be safe too, and creating a new homeostasis for your body to then actually draw you back into when you get out. But it takes time and it takes a lot of reiteration.
Mhm, mhm. What do you think is the biggest challenge in the work that you do?
I mean, for me, in the work that I do, like the work that I actually do doesn't feel challenging. Like I'm so passionate about it and I love it so much. And I love just like taking people through these processes and like helping them understand what they're experiencing inside and turning all those things on. So for me, the most challenging part has really been about messaging and how
Mm.
I'm coming across and how I'm getting my message across so that people that are meant to work with me can find me. That's really been the biggest challenge for me, which has nothing to do with my actual work.
Right, it's just the business side of it all.
Yeah.
And for the work that you do, how do you work with people? Like, what ways do you work with them?
Oh man, I mean, I work with people in all sorts of ways and it's really co-creative about where the person is in their state, what they're believing with themselves. I work with a lot of breath work, a lot of somatic experiencing and really like dropping people into their bodies and getting them to start exploring and feeling sensations. Sometimes people are so disconnected and in their minds that they can't even feel like if there's sensation in their body. And so it's really about cultivating that awareness first of am I experiencing anything in my body? Okay, what am I experiencing sensationally? And then starting to like sort of start unraveling and pulling on those threads with that. So I use breath work, somatics, meditations, like guided meditations, lots of like self pleasure and guidance around that because I that's one of the fastest ways to get into the nervous system and help sort of start pulling on all these threads that help us unwire things. Because if you think about it, we're constantly living in our minds, which is way up here. And if we're self pleasuring, especially like as women, I only work with women in my work right now, then we're self pleasuring. That's like the total other end of the central channel. And so it's going to help bring your it's going to bring your mind into your body and drop you down into your body and just start unraveling what you're feeling there for lack of any it needing to be anything else. Like, oh, I have a body, what does that feel like? And so it's just starting to like pull on these little threads and then working with whoever the client is in front of me and their particular threads and their particular sensations or parts of the body mind that are coming up. So there is a lot of like building relationships with the parts of self as well through the somatic experiencing and getting them on board, bringing them integration, maybe bringing them into giving them new roles and new ways of being or new places to live in the body. Really depends on the client and what's coming up for them and at at what level they're sort of at as well, because there's people at various levels. And so it's it can be a patient process with somebody that's been so disconnected from their body that they aren't able to feel sensation. And so that's a much slower process than somebody that's been like dropping into the body mind for years. Then we might just like dive straight into like working with the self pleasure and just like pull on threads much at a much deeper level.
So interesting. So within the work that you do with the breath work, the meditation, the somatics, the self-pleasuring and stuff like that, do you find that majority of people are really disconnected with their body when they come to you? Or do you find in a way they are there, but it's just like taking it to the next level? Like, or is it both?
I've definitely had clients from both sides. Worked with people from like that have been dropping into the body mind for years, and I've worked with people that have like never gone exploring in their body before and are like, "What? This is so strange," right? Like, so I've worked with both. I do think that either side of the spectrum that you're on, whether you've been kind of doing some somatic experiencing for a long time or you're brand new to it, when you have somebody holding that space and guiding you, that makes it quicker. Like it makes it much easier. Like you can, because it's obviously something you can do on your own and in your own meditations and explore the body mind, but you can drop in so much faster and you can really drop into the subconscious and be like, sharing with the person holding space with you or that's guiding you what's coming up, and you can track a lot easier, so you can go a lot deeper when somebody's holding you in that space. And as for like people that have never really done that work, I don't know that I don't know that I would call it quick. It's really depends on the person, and it's really a peeling back of layers and a peeling back of resistances, because if somebody is so disconnected that they've never, like, I do feel like the majority of us are connected, obviously, to an extent. It's more about this remembering that we've talked about. So remembering, like, I have breasts and they feel like this and they give me this sensation, and kind of like turning back on that sensation, and just then like starting to peel back the layers, because we can also just have a lot of resistance through conditioning and programming, or also through like our own ways that we've turned ourselves off or cut ourselves off from loving ourselves, from loving some part of ourselves physically or emotionally or energetically or otherwise.
That's so cool. I loved how you answered that. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you
That
for
was
the question.
beautiful. With that essence of pleasure, do you find that in the society that we're in today, that it tends to be an area that is less explored or more explored?
I think it's more explored if you're it's definitely more explored now than it has been in the past, for sure. As well as like embodiment, and this whole even philosophy and terminology around embodiment wasn't even a thing even 10 years ago, let's say, right? And I think that that world alone has opened up this exploration of pleasure and like reconnecting to our sexuality. And I think it's all kind of new, and we're all starting to awaken and remember together, because it's been so repressed and oppressed in society. And that being said, I think that there's been a lot of like there's exploitation and repression, and like, so it's, again, that's the pendulum swing, right, where we've got people with trauma that maybe then go into the exploited side of their sexuality, or vice versa into the repressed side. And also so goes like even beyond trauma, just in our societal conditioning as well, of like, sex is bad, sex is taboo, we don't talk about that, it's left in the closet and in the bedroom. But like, here's a billboard with naked people on it shoved down your throat every 5 minutes driving down the highway, or what, or in the media or whatever it is, right? So it's both, and I think that it's really about waking up to and coming back to intentionality around it, and where we are kind of just like reclaiming our right to utilize our sexuality and our self pleasure and our turn on for things beyond sex. Like,
Mm,
our sexual energy is our life force energy, our creative energy, our primal energy. Like, it's our eros. Like, it's literally the turn on of all of life. And you can see this reflected to us in nature as well, of like how nature is so very erotic and sexual. When you look around, like, you see it everywhere. And so it's really just infiltrated into all of it and to who we are as humans. And it helps us to stay in our bodies when we intentionally reclaim that energy for ourselves and stop leaking it everywhere or shutting it off completely and repressing it as well. And learn how to intentionally and powerfully, as well as responsibly, wield our own sexual energy for ourselves. Really, it's not for anybody else, and it's not to manipulate others as well, which comes more on like the exploitated side of that, where there is a lot of that in the world as well, where people exploit their sexual energy, or to use it for manipulation, or to get their way, or to get something, rather than wielding it responsibly and powerfully, which just means like you're utilizing it as your life force energy for yourself, for your creativity, for your embodiment.
mm-hmm. That's so cool. I loved how you expressed all of that. That was very beautifully, it gave me chills.
Thank you.
What speaking of sexuality, what do you feel the difference is between sensuality and sexuality?
I feel that sensuality is a is so I would say that sensuality is sort of on the surface of our sexual energy, and we can play in sensuality with the five senses and with nature, and we're moving through that, and it tends to be more um, a, s- um I don't want to say like surface level expression, because it's not like surface level. It gets to be deep and like sensual, but it's sensuality is just one expression of our sexual energy. I think that
Yeah.
that's the relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I always felt about it too. But I wanted to get another another opinion and viewpoint on it.
Yeah, and I feel like it can be a doorway in to exploring your sexuality deeper, is just start, and it's actually something I do use in my coaching as well with somatics and stuff like that, is just start turning on the senses. You know, what smells really good, and like what kind of beautiful things do you like to look at, or like can you eat your food from this space of pleasure, that like that kind of thing, and listen to music that brings you pleasure, and like so it can be a doorway in to the deeper work of like reclaiming and turning back on, and like all of the sexual energy aspects of you. It can be a doorway in. But once you've gotten in there and you've like reclaimed all of your sexual energy, and you're kind of moving from that wholeness of self where you're empowered in your sexuality, then sensuality gets to just be one avenue of expression.
That's beautiful. The senses are leading you into the path
Yeah,
of that pleasure.
absolutely.
That's so cool. Love it. With embodiment, and you were talking about embodiment and integration, do you find that within the integration of bringing in self-pleasure is takes a lot more of diving deeper into the layers to really getting to build this relationship with yourself?
I think it's really dependent on the person, and it depends on that person's willingness and bravery to like go there with themselves, but it can also really be dependent on like the level of trauma that's still living in somebody's body, whether or not they've had sexual trauma, or relational trauma or things like this. And so it's really taking into account like a holistic approach of like where is the woman in front of me at right now, and going from there. And it may be a process of, okay, we need to like peel back all of these gentle layers starting way out here, or like maybe she's done some of that, and it's more about like now she's just kind of showing up, and like she's ready to start, like she's gotten herself to a point where she's like ready to start diving straight into like the pleasure, and she knows that's what she needs to work on.
And so do you feel that within the work that you do, when you dive deeper into the layers and you get more into the root of it, this can allow that that trauma to be, I'm going to say, released or moved through, or the inner child work, whichever work that you're doing with it? Do you find that that releases and it allows more freedom and liberation in the people that you're working with?
I do feel that. I feel like it opens up new neural pathways in the brain for perception of our wounding and our inner child and any traumas that may exist. It also creates new ways of moving those sensations out of the body and giving them a safe place to be felt as well. So it's all of the above. And I would say it's like not really about getting rid of our trauma, even, or our wounds. It's really about integrating them. And I think that that's a key part of my work, is it's integrating those parts that maybe have been traumatized or are carrying wounds, or were conditioned that sex was bad, even, or like that touching yourself was, you couldn't, that's naughty, right? Things like
Mm-hmm.
this. So it's about really creating conversations and building relationships with those parts of yourself, and then getting them to feel safe with the pleasure. And so the pleasure is sort of a, it's sort of like a hot ticket into the nervous system, so to speak.
Oh, that's beautiful. The hot ticket into the nervous system.
It's not
Sign
quite
me
the
up.
way I wanted, but like, yeah, I feel like it's a it's a route that uh it makes it, it's a quick route for creating for creating new neural pathways, when we find different ways of bringing in pleasure, or even alchemizing pain that we may be experiencing, or traumatic emotions with pleasure, and like alchemizing them and bringing them together, and letting the body know that it's safe to feel both, and like it's all in this living on a spectrum. So
So it's
creating a lot of my work is about creating a lot of trust and safety, and a lot of that comes through working with the root and sacral chakras, which would be the pleasure centers.
mhm. So it comes from this place where the individual is dropping into their body, tapping into the senses, feeling things out. It's not about necessarily getting rid of the trauma, but integrating it. And when you say integrate, what do you actually mean by integrating the trauma or integrating the inner child?
I feel like it means bringing it into the now, for one, because a lot of times when we have trauma wounds or like inner child pieces that seem to be like stuck in a certain age, um, we're bringing them into the now, you know, letting them know who we are now, how old we are, like the work that we've done, what we're doing with our lives. A lot of these pieces just are stuck and they don't even know. It's sort of like real time past life regression by exploring the body mind and like talking to these parts of self and being like, no, like we're here now. And so like that's kind of the first step of integration and like bringing these parts into the whole of self, letting them know, who am I now, where am I, what am I doing. And that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to like grow up and disappear and be part of you, but it's giving them a safe place to express while also building that relationship with them so that they know that you're giving them this safe place and you accept them and they're allowed here and they're invited to have a seat at the table, but they don't get to run the show. Because that's a lot of times where we have like complex trauma or deep wounds and or like fiery inner children that were so wounded or abused, they take us over in this fight or flight sympathetic nervous system state. We get hijacked by them and we don't even realize it. And this is where we get triggered and reactionary and stuff like this because it's a part of self that's like taken you over and hijacked your system because it wants to be heard so badly. So the integration really comes about with building relationships with these parts of self so they know, hey, like I am 35 years old, like I'm doing all this work, like I got you, I hear you, I see you, I accept you, and like I've got you, you know. And so giving them that safe place to where then you're remembering to nurture that relationship, for instance with your inner child, where you're checking in with your inner child every now and then, or you start to feel your inner child like get triggered by something, and instead of her hijacking your system and getting reactionary, you get to take a beat and go in and drop in and have a conversation with her and be like, what can I give you today that will make you like feel better, right? Like, how can I serve you today? Like, you want to go dance? You want some ice cream? Like, let's build this relationship and play so that you know I've got your back. And then you're not having to hijack me for attention.
So then it really brings you into this full circle when you're working with people, that it becomes this place where people really begin to know within the moment what is going to actually nurture them and build them up and support them. And on the same side, what could deplete them and drain them. So it brings them this more deeper understanding of themselves, and through curiosity and through reflection and really observing.
Absolutely. And simply through just having the wherewithal to be able to drop in because you've created that connection and have that relationship with whichever part of self it is, just the wherewithal to be able to drop in and have that conversation with that part of you. So then you know. So what you need, or what if something's depleting you and needs to shift. Like you may not know right off the bat, but you have the tools to drop in and simply ask yourself or the part of self.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I could talk to you forever and
I know
ever.
this conversation has been so good.
What are some key points that we could leave the listeners with? And do you have any upcoming events or anything that you would like to share that we could also put in the show notes so people can be directed to you as well?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Natasha. A few key points for the embodiment and integration journey of coming into wholeness and unity with all that is. Uh, because I'm me, first I'm going to say, like, just start connecting with the elements. It's such a simple doorway into that, into reconnecting with the all of everything internally and outside of us. Beyond that, a little bit deeper would be start cultivating self-awareness. And by that, it's like exploring the body mind, start to drop into your body and just even in a meditation or a body meditation where you're laying on your bed and just start scanning your body and like name the sensations that you're feeling as you start scanning your body from head to toe. I think this is a really powerful practice that just like gets out of our mind and starts bringing awareness to the different parts of our body. And at first your body might start tingling all over because it's like, whoa, you've never like brought your intention here before. So just doing that, just simply breathing and breathing your breath through your body and naming whatever sensations come alive and present for you. One last key point, let's say, would be to get out in nature more. We stay inside, we're sitting at our computers all the time. I just feel like we don't connect with nature enough. And again, like that simple point of interaction of just being in nature, getting your feet on the earth, to get out in nature and be intentional about it. Don't go out in nature and be on your phone and like be trying to like learn something and listening to a podcast and you're out in nature getting your movement on. Like that's great. If you like, I think there's nothing wrong with any of that and that's great. But like go be in nature with some intention of like really touching the earth and just reconnecting in that way, turning off noise.
Absolutely. And really, like you said, really be present, be in nature.
Yeah.
Not
Rather than, oh, I'm
necessarily
out in nature, but like I'm on my phone.
like distracted, but really be in the awareness of being in nature.
Yeah. It's really helpful. It's really healing. And yeah, you'll start to notice not only the eroticism of nature when you're present with nature and you can really start to see this like eros flowing through all of nature, but you start to also realize the sameness that we have with all of nature as well.
And I guess a part of that key point is that it actually brings us closer to the rhythms and cycles that are running within us as well.
Absolutely.
What's running outside is also running within. So it brings that integration and that embodiment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the quickest way in is to start remembering that interconnection and interrelationship.
Yeah. And how can people find you? And do you have any special events coming up or anything that we could
great.
share
Thank
with the
you.
listeners?
Thanks, because I forgot that part. So you can find me on social media at the Lola Darling _. I hang out there most of the time. I also have if you're more into breath work, I do have an extra Instagram channel for my breath work. It's at 6 Element Breath. So you can find me there, pop into my DMs. Super love having conversations with everyone. And then on May 7th, I have a free offering. I'm going to do a women's womb breath salon, we're calling it. And I'm just going to take you on a deep journey with breath into the womb, into the ovaries, into the pelvic floor and pelvic bowl, and down into the earth and the magnetic grid of the earth. And really just like dropping ourselves down with breath into the sacred feminine and the feminine body and seeing what comes up and what comes about with that. So join us there. And I also am taking one-on-one clients right now. So I have openings for some one-on-one clients to just drop deeper into this work around reconnecting to your body, getting out of your mind, embodiment, and really like letting go of the masks and the identities and coming into a place of authentic truth and power. So thank you so much for having me. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. And for that free event, is that online?
It's online on Zoom, so I'll send you the link so you can put it in the show notes if you want to register for that. And if you register and can't make it on the 7th, you will get the replay. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Lola, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are a beautiful, beautiful soul. And you just opened my eyes a lot today too. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.